Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. And in this update, we are actually going to check out QNT's price chart and see what is going on specifically in the short term. But before we get into what is happening in terms of technical analysis, we are going to continue our series, which started 2 videos back, and talk about programmable money. And so far, we have been digging into how programmable money is changing the game. And it's not just about sending digital cash, it is also about embedding logic into the money itself. We also touched on Quant's overledger, which isn't trying to be the star of the show, but more like maybe the backstage crew making sure every single thing runs smoothly between different blockchains. Now, in this update, we are going to zoom out just a little bit and talk about a very wild concept, which is, you probably know it, the digital dollar, and how QNT might actually be one of the few players that can help make it work. So, are you ready? Let's dive in and see what is going on. And here's the deal. You see, the digital dollar is basically the US dollar, but stripped of paper and rebuilt for the internet. It is issued by a central authority, and I think in this case makes perfect sense to argue it's going to be most likely Federal Reserve, and it lives entirely on a secure digital ledger. But unlike your regular bank transfer, this thing actually is able to carry logic. You can set conditions, I don't know, let's say for example, only transfer X amount of money if Y happens, or maybe this money expires in only X amount of days. That is exactly what makes it programmable, and it's not just about money. No, it's also about money with the rules already baked in. Okay, it's very important to understand and focus on this keyword. I didn't say it's money with rules attached. No, I said it's money with the rules baked in. Now, there is no final design yet. Let's just get that out of the way. And at the moment, I see some proposals looking like tokenized bank deposits. Others actually mimic a bit of a stable coins, and maybe some go full on CBDCs. And here is what's going on in my mind. I think the digital dollar project is where all these ideas get tested. It is essentially a mix of tech experts, economists, and policymakers trying to figure out how to balance privacy, speed, cost, and resilience. And here is where Quant starts to look like a solid candidate. You see, the Fed isn't going to build a digital dollar that only works on one chain. I think we can all agree on that. And because of that, they will need something that can talk to multiple systems, legacy banks, maybe new blockchains, maybe even other countries' CBDCs. And that is exactly, you know what overledger literally does to the T. It's not a blockchain itself, it is a layer that connects them all, and it abstracts the transaction logic from the base ledger. So with that, you are not really locked into only one tech stack. And that, in my opinion, is absolutely massive when you are dealing with national infrastructure. And then there is the QNT token itself. You see, it's very important to know that QNT is not just a token. No, it is essentially how access and economic incentives are managed across the overledger network. For instance, you want to enforce compliance rules, you want to make sure nodes behave properly. Okay, QNT is part of that mechanism. It's not there for only trading purposes. No, it is also baked into how the system stays secure and efficient all at the same time. So overall, if the Federal Reserve wants a digital dollar that is programmable, interoperable, and scalable from day one, Quant's architecture actually, in my view, checks a lot of those boxes. And it's not flashy and fancy, I get it, but it is absolutely built for exactly this kind of job, which is making complex systems talk to each other without really breaking. Now, let's say, okay, we are going to see some sort of a collaboration between QNT and maybe to a degree Fed in order to participate in creating the digital dollar infrastructure. So from this point moving forward in this update, we are now going to speculate a little bit and talk about some numbers, because it is one thing to say Quant could power the digital dollar, and it is like a whole other thing to ask, what does that actually mean for QNT token and the price itself? How much demand would that create? and is it even a sustainable model? So basically, I ran some scenarios, nothing really fancy, just simple back of the envelope stuff to see what happens when Overledger starts handling real volume from a Fed-backed digital dollar. And I came up with 3 different possibilities. Scenario number 1 is the conservative usage of Overledger. And in this scenario, we are going to say maybe the network handles like 5 million transactions a day. That's not really huge. And it's, for example, just a mix of retail payments, maybe some wholesale settlements. If each transaction is going to cost maybe 0.001 QNT token, that is about 5,000 QNT per day. Multiple that across a year, and you would be looking at, I think, about 1.8 million QNT burned or maybe logged annually. And that, my friends, is already 12% of the total supply, which is, I think, about 14.8 million token. Now, let's imagine that half of that is going to get permanently locked up, maybe through licensing deals with central banks or maybe long-term node staking. Doesn't really matter. That's already 6% of the total supply gone from circulation, and we are still in conservative zone. Scenario number 2 is the one suggesting we're going to have a moderate adoption of Overledger, and now in this case, I think we can easily have up to 10 million transactions per day. And maybe in this scenario, the digital dollar is going to start getting traction with payroll, remittances, and government disbursements. And if the fees jump to, let's say, I don't know, 0.005 QNT token per transaction, you are burning through, guess what, 50,000 QNT daily. And that is about 18.5 million QNT per year, more than the entire supply. And I think obviously we can all agree that this model is absolutely not sustainable. But let's talk also about the third possibility, and then we will get back to this very important problem and tell you what is the actual solution. You see, my final scenario is the full aggressive rollout, and in this case, now we should imagine full scale adoption, maybe over 100 million transactions a day, and that is going to be, for example, mass retail usage, maybe embedded payments, possibly even IoT microtransactions, the whole thing. And even with a teeny tiny fee of, let's say, 0.001 QNT per transaction, you are burning about 36.5 million QNT token annually, and that is more than double the total supply. So obviously, the model in here is absolutely breaking. You need to, for example, switch to something called micro fees. Maybe instead of 0.001 QNT, you're going to have like 0.00001 QNT per transaction. Or maybe you need to go full hybrid with subscription and capped usage tiers. And even then, you are still looking at, let's say, about more than 3.5 million QNT token per year, plus whatever gets locked up for licensing. And that could be over 25% of the supply gone annually. And we haven't even factored in developer incentives or maybe node rewards. Let's not even talk about those. So what does this all mean? You see, if you want to, for example, implement the micro fee system, then okay, essentially you actually need price appreciation big time. Why is that? Let's say each transaction is going to cost you 0.001 QNT token. Now, with the price of $100 per QNT token, that is going to be like 10 cents. But if the fee per transaction is going to be denominated by actual dollars, let's say that 10 cents that we talked about earlier, then okay, if you get price appreciation, and for example, we get like a 10x move on the upside, all of a sudden, you are free to implement the micro fee system. And in that case, you're not going to have over 3.5 million, aka over 25% of the supply locked up annually. No. In that case, you're going to have, I don't know, let's say like 400,000 token locked up annually, which is definitely a more sustainable model. So what is it that I'm trying to say? You see, with the previous assumptions, it seems like that even if you want to go according to the modest adoption scenario, QNT demand will start eating into the supply really fast. And unless the token price rises, the model doesn't really hold. You cannot simply burn millions and millions of QNT tokens per year at low prices and expect the network to stay absolutely healthy and sustainable. This is definitely not a thing. And that, my friends, is exactly why I am so bullish. Not because of the hype, but because the math actually forces it in here. If Overledger powers the digital dollar, or maybe even the digital euro, which is definitely confirmed now, or generally even any large-scale programmable money system, QNT has to go up in value big time. Otherwise, the economics do not simply work, and when the price rises, scarcity kicks in, incentives align, and the whole ecosystem gets stronger and stronger as day goes by. So this isn't about a speculation. No, it is about the structure, and the more adoption you get, the more pressure it builds on the token. And that is exactly why long-term investors should be definitely watching these types of news and events. Sure, at the moment, since the prices aren't really doing a whole lot, these types of news and articles, reading them is going to be very boring. But if you do care about the fundamentals and also the technicals of your project and you want to make money in the market, then okay, you have to do your due diligence and come up with your own specific conclusion. Okay, please, for that matter, do not even listen to me. Do your own research and see whether the things that I'm talking about is right or not. And then if you thought that QNT is a fantastic project and it does have a bright future, you know what? Awesome, we do have a common ground. Feel free to watch these updates. So having said all that, let's now go on the live chart and see what is happening specifically in the short term. Okay, here we are. And if you remember, the last time that we talked about QNT, we were right around these areas. And the idea was that since in this phase on the upside, I think we said we took these highs. Okay, makes sense to say maybe we are having, instead of a 5-wave, possibly an A, B, C zigzag. And that to us opened the door to having, I don't know, let's say like an A, B, C in form of either a running flat or maybe an expanded flat, depending on whether we are going to take this important high or not. But that wasn't really the main point of the previous technical analysis update on QNT. No, the main point was that we shouldn't be overwhelmingly optimistic, and odds are if we are even going to get a move on the upside, that's going to be actually part of a correction structure into this wave 4, meaning what? We should probably count on having yet another move on the downside into our wave 5. So what happened? Unfortunately, what we pretty much expected, and not only we didn't get like a strong move up, instead from here we got a continuation of the move down. Now, before we get into what is going on in this phase, let me actually cheer you up a bit and tell you, you know what, you don't really need to be worried about QNT, because on a higher degree, I think even if we are going to get a 5-wave down, it's not necessarily going to mean that this is like the beginning of a new downtrend in quant. No, most likely it's going to be into the C leg of an A, B, C running, or maybe an expanded flat, which has started from this high and not the highest high right in here, about, let's say, $125. Now, here is the most important point. Before this flat structure, what do we have? I think a clear-cut, beautiful looking 5-wave on the upside. So essentially, sure, in the short term, we may continue our move down, but overall, do not get it twisted. I think we are looking great and bullish. Why? Because on a higher degree, this is 1, this is 2, and what's next? You guessed it right. Big move up into wave 3 and 4 and 5. So, you know, cheer up a bit. Just because we are going to go down a little bit more in the short term doesn't mean that we are looking very much bearish. In fact, quite the opposite. For those of you who really haven't bought QNT at all, maybe this is going to be a decent long opportunity, but I know probably most of you aren't going to use it because we were at these levels before and you didn't buy before. So, you know, what changed? Why should you buy it right now? I believe your emotions are going to, unfortunately, once more get the best of you. Now, having said all that, let's zoom in more and see what is going on in like very short term. So at the moment, I'm thinking about two different counts. One scenario suggests that this whole move starting from here to about the lowest low in here is going to be an ABC, and once more we may see a 5-wave on the upside. But again, I'm gonna say this is probably going to be overall an ABC expanded flat into wave 4, and then please count on yet another move down. And at that point, we are going to make new updates and see where are we going to go from there. This is scenario number one. Scenario number two suggests that, you know what, maybe to about actually here was the end of our wave 4. And for example, you can consider the possibility of having an ABCDE, a triangle structure, and this can be a 5 wave down. In that case, we can argue maybe this is going to be like a wave 1, correction for 2, and at the moment we are on our way down to have a decent move into wave 3, 4, and yet another strong move down into wave 5 in order to complete the subwave for this wave 5 and on a higher degree for that whole ABC flat that we talked about earlier. The point that I'm trying to make is this: it seems like that at the moment in QNT, our move down is just simply not over yet. Now, what if we do get a pass? At that point, again, like we said earlier, please consider that ABC flat that we talked about earlier. But am I able to tell you that we are going to get a bounce from the current point, or maybe a very strong move on the downside? You see, I'm not really going to say this or that scenario for absolute sure is going to happen. No, because there is simply no certainty in any market at any given moment. We are only talking about different possibilities, okay? It's very important to understand that if you want to be certain, essentially that means you are 100% able to see the future, and that is really not a thing. In fact, I'm going to argue I don't really know whether in the next moment I'm going to be alive or not. Predicting whether you're going to be alive in the next moment or not, it's actually the same thing as predicting what is going to happen next in the market with absolute certainty. That is simply not realistic, okay? It's very important to understand that. Having said that though, I think we do have some interesting signs in terms of indicators, which signals either we are going to get a move up or maybe down from the current. So let's go on H4 time frame, zoom in more and see what is happening. Okay, let's just bring MACD back. There we go. As you can see, in a stock RSI, we are having a buy signal, and in MACD, this is a sell signal. So if you want to say that we're going to have a move up in the short term, then okay, fair enough. Wait and see in both of these indicators a buy signal, and at that point, okay, maybe we are going to do something like this. But that's not really the main point. The main point is this. Let's just zoom out a bit more. Okay, as you can see, on the live chart, we are having a series of lower lows. However, in MACD, what do we have? These are actually a series of higher lows. So this means, look, you are having a beautiful bullish divergence. And let's actually delete a stock RSI so we can see MACD a bit better. There we go. Here is our divergence line. Now, here's a very important point. Please pay attention. This is actually the key. A divergence by itself, a bullish one, is a fantastic sign suggesting bears are kind of running out of power, and in the short term we are going to have a move on the upside. So far this sign actually confirms a move on the upside. However, the moment that we get maybe yet another move down in QNT, in order to at that point in MACD get a break of this important line, okay, number one, the divergence is going to get invalidated. Number two, as a result of the break of the divergence line, you are at that point going to see probably an acceleration of this move on the downside. So essentially, this importance line right in here is going to be your signal if you want to find out whether we are going to get a move up or down from the current point. As long as we are not breaking this, we can count on a move up. Break it, okay, that is going to be a bit of a different story. But overall, again, do not really worry. Odds are it's just all part of the bullish process. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in Quant's price chart. Anyway, if you found any value in my content, I would really appreciate if you like this video and consider subscribing to my channel and follow me on Twitter. And if you want more, maybe you want a complete analysis for your own specific crypto, or maybe you want to learn some decent TA in order to be able to make good money in the markets, you can become a member and ask me anything you want. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and loved ones. Goodbye.